Okay, I think we're recording. So, hi Sean, welcome to my inspirational stories. So, if anyone's watched the last one, they'll see that I am doing monthly inspirational stories every month in 2021. And Sean and I were also, and this is not going to be a theme that I'm just interviewing people that were on my NLP course last year, but there are a few people that I heard the stories on the NLP course and I'm particularly interested in speaking to them. Again, it's about inspiring other people and motivating people when facing adversity to inspire them to get through that adversity and use techniques and strategies to get themselves out. So Sean, this is Sean Bailey, and Sean's just going to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his story. So welcome, Sean, and thanks for doing this today.
No worries. Thanks, Yvonne. Yeah, so hi, everyone. My name's Sean Bailey. I'm 37 years old, based in Runcorn in the northwest, so just outside Manchester. I guess my story started when I was 22. I was playing football at a reasonably high level, and I went into a tackle and didn't come out of it the same way. So I slid in on the pitch, so the ball got cleared into a space where I had to run about 15 metres to my left. Did what we call in football a slide tackle. That slide tackle pushed the ball away, but the guy who I was tackling fell on me and he landed on my head. He was the biggest guy on the field, and when he landed on my head, he sort of pushed me forward, and I immediately fell backwards, and I was completely paralysed from the neck down. I couldn't feel anything at all except for extreme heat in terms of sensation. It was a really hot day anyway. So physio come running on because I couldn't get up, I couldn't move. I remember looking up to one of my teammates saying, I can't feel my legs and I can't feel my arms. Again, didn't know what was going on. I thought I'd slipped a disc. Didn't realise what a spinal cord was or a spinal cord injury. Physio ran on and he said, call 999, tell them it's a category A. I didn't have a clue what that meant. But within about 5 minutes, there was a paramedic vehicle literally pulled up next to the pitch and a paramedic looking over me, checking my sensation. He injected morphine just in my arm, and I've got a real phobia of needles, and I didn't feel a thing, and I would have felt that. So after the morphine, obviously feeling a little bit hazy, put onto an ambulance, then arrived, and I was put onto like a hardboard with chop block collars around my neck, taken to hospital, which is about 5 minutes away in Warrington. And it was just chaotic in sort of the emergency room, if you like. I don't know what the terminology is, like A&E type thing, and people checking on me, different types of consultants. And then a guy came in and he announced himself to me. He was the sort of orthopedic surgeon at Warrington Hospital, and he'd just left his daughter's birthday party to come to see me. And he said to me that, Sean, we need to perform this operation on you to give you a chance of walking. I was like, oh my God, still, because of the sort of morphine and the hysteria about what was going on, I was a little bit out of it, if I'm honest. So I just said, just do what you've got to do. And because I couldn't move or sign anything, the process that they had to go through to sort of permit that operation was just unbelievable. It had to be sort of recorded and countersigned and countersigned and countersigned. Anyway, the operation, 9-hour surgery to reduce, compress and stabilise my spine. So I fractured my C5 vertebrae and broke my C6 vertebrae. So that's like just here, top of your neck. Severely damaged my spinal cord, like there was severe bruising. And then, I was in a coma for 3 days. Don't remember a thing after that. And then I was slowly woken out of the coma, brought in like it was like, what do they call it? Like ICU. It was called the high dependency unit at the time. I think we now call it ICU.
Yeah.
So I was brought around and then put more in a general ward, an orthopedic ward, and the recovery started pretty much there on in. It was probably about 5 days later, I still couldn't feel anything, but they decided to sit me up and put my feet on the floor. And to look, knowing what a hospital floor would feel like if you've got bare feet, it'd be cold, tiled floor. To not feel anything, I'll never forget that sensation. I felt physically sick. Like I felt like my head was going to fall off. It was knowing now what I know about spinal cord injuries, they shouldn't have done that at that time. So as I'm in the general hospital, obviously a very acute spinal cord injury, you're not going to spend the rest of your recovery in a general hospital. They've just not got the expertise there. So in the northwest, the spinal cord injury centre is in Southport, which is about 30 miles away from where I lived. Not the most of accessible places. So the senior consultant from Southport Spinal Injuries, the Northwest Centre for Spinal Cord Injuries, came out to assess me. He said, yeah, you'll come to us, but we've got a 6-week wait for a bed. So doctors in Warrington said, well, you could also, there's another option on the table. You could go to a place in Shropshire, the Midland Centre for Spinal Injuries, a village called Oswestry, Robert Jones and Agnes Hunt Orthopaedic Hospital, the best orthopaedic hospital in the country. So I was like, which one's better in terms of rehab? Oswestry, right, we'll go in there. There's a bed available immediately. And it literally, it was like almost like the flick of a button. I was on my way out of Warrington after 3 weeks, and I was being transferred to Oswestry, to the Midland Centre for Spinal Injuries. Obviously, in Warrington, they'd been sitting me up and they'd been doing things with me, like bits of physio. So my sporting background played a massive role in my recovery. But my thinking and where I was at was I'd been sat up, they'd had physio comes. I thought I was recovering and I thought I was progressing. And I was checked into Oswestry and I was literally going to be like knocked down about 15 pegs. So
Really?
I arrived, they're doing all like sensation checks, everything, checking your colour of urine, so many different levels of analysis. It was just surreal. And he said, oh, yeah, you're going to be in bed for 14 weeks. And I was like, what? 14 weeks? I've just been getting out of bed. And he said, no, that shouldn't have happened. You need to be in bed for 14 weeks. We need to let the spinal cord rest, reduce the swelling and the inflammation before we can assess the damage. So, 14 weeks in a bed was quite tough. I mean, the bed, obviously, it tilted and turned, and it was a real, it wasn't just like a double bed or anything like that. It was a really high-tech bed. So I was rigged up to all types of machines, and that was it. That was my life for 14 weeks, staying in bed. But we started off, well, there was a very sort of regimented plan about what you would do and how you would do it and the treatment you'd be having during this 14-week period, and also the exit criteria to get you from moving from a bed into what would be a wheelchair and to get you progressing towards discharge. So probably about a week into my stay at Oswestry, not that it was like they were seeking any sort of prognosis or anything like that, but I can't remember how the conversation came about. But my consultant he was like the director of the spinal injuries unit. He was probably the best spinal injuries consultant in the country at the time. And he came and he said, Sean, I can't remember how we got into the conversation, but he said to me that you need to accept that you will never walk again. People with C5, C6 injuries don't walk. And I said to him, I'll have you a bet I walk out of this hospital. And he must have thought, like, who's this guy? He's been around the block in spinal injuries for years, countless levels of research, real pioneer with some of the treatment. And here's me just trotting in like, so I'm going to walk out of here, no problem. I didn't even didn't have a clue what a spinal cord was. That's changed now. But so what started to happen is I'm on, we call it bed rest, 14 weeks. And again, going back to my sporting experience, background, upbringing, I was started to do things that not everybody else was doing who was in that place. I was doing trying to move my arms and legs, fingers and toes, anywhere that was paralysed. I was trying to move. I was trying to stimulate movement by just how you would do. So I was trying to create bicep curls. My intention was that I needed my brain to fire, send the message down my spinal cord. Obviously, the education was getting there now, and maybe it would trigger a movement. There was nothing happening, and I'll do sort of like 3 sets of 10 reps on every limb, pretty much 3 times a day. It was really hard work, just
Exhausting.
Just trying to do that. I was not getting anything back, and it was tough to take psychologically because you want to move, you're desperate for your limbs to move, but nothing's happening. So I was then on using that as a sort of tool, again drilling back into the sport, but then I was trying to sort of support myself from a nutrition point of view. So again, bringing it back to the sporting arena, making sure I was eating the right food to get me the right amount of energy, that I was feeling good, feeling as strong as I possibly could. So that was a key part of what I was trying to do. With spinal cord, this sort of part happened by accident, but with spinal cord injury, you're very susceptible to urine infections and bladder infections, which can literally be lethal. You can get backflow into your kidneys with a real serious infection, and you can end up in serious trouble. So I had to have a hydration strategy, which was put upon me by the recovery team around me. So drinking lots of cranberry juice, which I hated at the time.
Can imagine.
Yeah, it's grim. It was grim. And loads of water. So you're basically constantly flushing out the microbes from your bladder wall. Yeah. So this hydration strategy became part of it. And then obviously you're in hospital, you're wired up to all sorts of machines, catheter, everything. You're constantly being turned in this bed so you don't get bed sores. So you were disturbed a lot at night. So I made sure as well that I apportion the right amount of time during the day to get the right amount of sleep. So I was getting at least 7 hours of sleep. And this was happening sort of bit bitty, a little bit all over the place, but it was happening not by accident, but it was just me doing what I've always done from a sporting perspective and how I would prepare for competition. So 14 weeks went by. I started to get movement in my arms, movement in my legs. My left leg was moving, but my right leg wasn't. And I was having all sorts of thoughts that I was going to have my right leg amputated and I can just get around on crutches. And,
wow.
You know, I was 22 years old and you're thinking about those things.
Oh, it's incredible.
And my upbringing, I'm from a real working class area where industry and mining was a big thing. And you never ever showed weakness. You were brought up to be tough and resilient. And that had its real negative sides because you didn't talk about how you felt and that type of thing. But also, I think it built certain characteristics in me that got me through this journey of spinal cord injury. So around about, I'm getting to the point where I'm going to be moved from the bed to a wheelchair. And to do this, I've got to pass a series of tests where I'm put on like a tilt table, strapped on. Like it is the most unreal experience, and you just start tilting you 10 degrees at a time, and you stay at that angle for 10 minutes, and you have your blood pressure taken, like it's like your pulse, your heart rate variability, everything, like loads of things. And if you fall out of these guidelines, you back down and you're straight back in bed. And I failed the first attempt, and I was absolutely gutted because I was intent that I had to get into a wheelchair. That was like my next goal: get into the wheelchair, get into physio proper, and what I mean by properly is a physio room with everybody else, and really starting to extend and push myself. My right leg still hadn't moved at this point, and then a week later, my right leg just shot out of the air and moved, and it was like, oh, is it a spasm or is it genuine movement? And it was genuine movement. I could control it. And then I remember feeling this warm trickle down my leg. I'd not been able to pass urine because I was paralysed. And I could feel it. I was on a catheter. The catheter had been taken out. And I remember one of the inpatients coming into me and saying, you know, like if you can pee, you can walk because you can control your bottom part of your body. So next time, my next goal was, right, still, I've got to get out of this bed and I've got to get into a wheelchair. So I did everything you can think of in terms of preparation. I was looking to ways to cheat the system about how to get out of bed. Everything. I had everything covered. I know I didn't need everything covered. I just passed it naturally. Got out of bed, into a wheelchair for so many hours a day, and then back in bed. So that's progress for me. And as you progress, you start to move around from the acute stage into sort of the next level stage, which I can't remember what it was called. But you're no longer an acute patient. You're more like a rehab patient.
Yeah.
I remember one night this was pretty bad. I was in bed and I'd been moved from my room to like a bay, and there was a guy across from me in this square bay, and the doors flew open one night, like middle of the night, and you heard the defib firing up, like something had happened in the night. I couldn't see. They had covers round and all that thing, but I couldn't sit up because I was still sort of brace on and stuff like that. Anyway, the next morning he wasn't there. He died in the night, and it was just like, what has just happened? You know, from literally two meters away I was. It was a bit, I don't know, a bit surreal.
Surreal, yeah.
So then, I started to do physio. And physio was, again, you've got a preconception that you're going to be like lifting weights or on an exercise bike or whatever you think. It was absolutely nothing like that. I was lay on a bed with my foot in a hanging brace, just trying to move my toes for about 3 weeks every day. And it was just like, again, massive, like back down to earth moment. You think you're making progress and you've got a vision of what progress is. And before you know it, bang, it's not what that vision is. And you think, am I even getting anywhere here? But I was, and day by day, I started to stand up. I started to learn to walk like you would do if you was a toddler, using so many different pieces of equipment, crutches, walking frames on wheels, you name it. I did it. And every day it was like a step further, a step further, a step further. And surgeon was just like, I do not know how you are doing this. We don't see people with your injury walk out of this hospital. And I know what I said to you, you're just defying everything. And I was sort of like, look, I was relentless in pursuit of this, relentless. I was eating everything that I had to eat. I was just literally in this moment. I at this point, I used to get like one day I had 65 visitors when I was in the general hospital, 65 visitors. And I basically had to create a rota system. But what I did when I was in this rehab moment, I said, right, I don't want any visitors. I don't want no one. And I said to the hospital, no visitors are allowed to come to me until I say. So I was like 4 weeks without seeing anybody that I knew. And I was just absolutely flying in terms of rehab.
So did you make that decision because you wanted to concentrate on your rehab?
Yeah, I didn't want any distraction. And for example, what I used to say is, if there was spare physio sessions going, I wanted them. And if I had a visitor, if one became available pretty quickly and I had a visitor, I wouldn't be able to access it. I would have to entertain the visitor, if you like. So I said, right, I don't want anyone. This is what I'm doing. This is my focus. Next time you see me, I'll be like better than I am now. So I got a discharge date, and I was discharged with everything from a wheel. I was in hospital for 6 months essentially, but I had everything from a wheelchair, crutches, below leg caliper, foot up splint, you name it, I had it in terms of walking aids. And then you sort of come back into society. It was very early spring, and I was coming home at late summer, and it was just, everything had changed. I'd become a disabled person overnight. I hadn't even thought about that again. From an area that's working class and poor socioeconomics, things like disability was never something that you came across very often. And not that there was any stereotype of it. There probably was actually stereotype to it. And I wasn't that stereotype, but it was something that I hadn't processed. there was no sort of preparation in terms of when you're discharged as to what to expect. You're in a hospital, that the door's open for you, you're on a flat surface, you're told where to go, what to eat, when to do it, everything's laid out for you. Then all of a sudden, bang, you're in the big wide world as a disabled person with minimal preparation. So, you know, it was big party when I got home, and all the local press were all over it. I was like a little bit like the poster boy of the local area for a bit. And I'd seriously, I couldn't go anywhere without getting stopped and well wishes, which was amazing. But it didn't last forever, and you were sort of on this high.
Yeah.
But a lot had changed for me psychologically. And at that point, you didn't talk about it, but also physically, I couldn't play football anymore. I didn't realise that, you know, all my social networks were involved in sport, and now I couldn't be involved in sport. A lot had changed, and that put me into some, probably 12 months after discharge, I was in some really dark places, because I had to not learn to drive, but you couldn't drive for a long time. You had literally no freedom whatsoever. And it was tough. I remember I started to go back to work after about 12 months. And this is when I knew there was a bit of a problem, in that I was driving back from work in Manchester, going past Manchester Airport on the M56. I still remember exactly where it was. I had a flashback of the injury, the impact, like the sounds, the smells, everything. It was horrible the way it made me feel. And I just said, it happened again. And the second time it happened, where it was, had no relation to what happened. I still no idea what triggered it, but I wasn't really thinking about that part. I just went completely off the rails, drinking, drugs. I was just absolutely abusing every single substance that I could get my hands on. And the gateway was alcohol for me. So I would start drinking. It'd lead me to places that, really dark places. Yeah. And it's something that I hadn't dealt with or thought about. I grew up in an area where there's 27, 28 pubs in a 3-mile radius. So alcohol was a big part of the culture, drinking and that type of thing. I grew up around probably alcoholism as I was younger. My dad was a big drinker. Been exposed to drugs. I was exposed to seeing drug use at an early age. Not that I was involved in it. I was playing sport, and that was sort of my life. And it was my gateway out of that lifestyle. But I somehow found myself in there, drinking more and more and more, and drug use more and more.
Ironic, really. Quite ironic.
Yeah, the irony was clear. But I at one point, I went to the doctors, and he diagnosed me with PTSD. Do you want to have these tablets? I was like, look, I was already taking a lot of medication to manage spinal cord injury spasms and managing your bladder and bowels and all sorts of things. I said, I don't want to put anything else in my body. I'll be like a bloody rattle if I jump up and down. Mm-hmm. So he prescribed me counselling. Didn't work. 2 sessions in, I found myself lying to the counsellor. I was like, this isn't for me. I didn't want to talk about my past. I didn't want to explore it. And yeah, I was just literally in this circle of, it was just a vicious circle of drinking, drugs, abuse, substance abuse, constant. At the time, you know, social, like people, I didn't realise how much sport was connected to my social life and to my well-being. It was everything for me. It was absolutely everything. It was my like ticket out of where I lived. It gave me loads of opportunities. It was where all my friends were. I was playing football 4, 5, 6 times a week, basketball, different sports, and I loved it. And now I couldn't do that. No one had addressed that. I'd not addressed it, and I'd certainly not processed it myself. So what I was going through, there wasn't a template to follow or anything like that for recovery. But then my dad died. Cancer, and we watched him literally. He couldn't have any treatment. It was really tough to take. I was 24, newly disabled, just lost my dad. Then my nan passed away very shortly, just before my dad. And my nan, I'd lived with my nan since I was 14 years old. So
that's hard.
I've got all this going on, and I'm still trying to come to terms that I've got a disability, and still trying to improve my physical capacity and capabilities. And it just carried on and on and on. Drinking became worse and worse and worse. Went to get help for once, and again, it was like a counselling type session. And I was like, this, it's not working. It's not working. So at this point, it was about 2009. In this cycle, I was fit enough to take my first FA coaching badges. So getting back involved in football and in sport and giving something back to passing on my experience to other people, I was hoping to do. So breezed through the first badge, they fast tracked me to the second badge, breezed through that. And then I wrote to Man United, emailed them saying, could I come in and do some volunteering? So went in, started to work with a team. I wanted to coach disability football because I was now disabled. I felt I could give something back to that community of people from a sporting perspective, having played football at a reasonable level.
Yeah.
So I took over a pan disability team, which is boys, young men with multiple disabilities, from amputees, hearing impairments, cerebral palsy, social disabilities like ADHD and stuff like that. All different kinds of things playing together. And the team I was working with had never won a game of football in their sort of existence at Man United. And then within 6 months, we won our little league, which was brilliant. They were so happy.
Fantastic.
And at this point, I was starting to realise, again, the importance of sport on well-being and more so on health. I was like challenging the players to lead a healthy lifestyle, to make sure that when they come to play and train, that they're in the best condition that they can be in. Parents were approaching me saying, like, what are you doing for my son? I remember a particular guy called Josh. He had real behaviour difficulties. He said, but because of this, he's changing so much, and he's starting to thrive in his education, which was absolutely, to have that influence on someone was just like mind blowing. But United then fast tracked me to work with the elite deaf team, and they then commissioned a documentary about the team and about my story, about my recovery from spinal cord injury. But all this time, I was now this football coach working at Man United. Again, a bit of a poster boy, and everyone loves a back from a story like where I can't even bloody think of the word, but rags to riches type.
I know what you mean. Inspirational sort of.
Yeah, we're like beating the odds type thing. So they commissioned this documentary. They followed me and the team around for about 2 years. It was unbelievable experience. A little bit of media training about how to answer questions back to a camera and stuff like that. And it was like we were meeting everybody. I was meeting like Sir Alex Ferguson, Ryan Giggs, worked with him loads of times. It was just like I'd watched these guys growing up and I idolised them. We met Michelle Obama on the day before the Olympics started in London at this absolutely surreal event at the American Embassy, or what was the American Embassy in London. It was absolutely bananas. I've never experienced anything like it. But again, in this background, I had this substance abuse still going on and wasn't dealing with it. Yeah. So I was probably I call myself the biggest hypocrite in the world, because I was telling these guys to sort of lead this healthy life, prepare like this, get good sleep, making sure you're hydrated, and I was just doing the complete opposite. So I moved at Man United, and then started coaching with the FA and working with their elite cerebral palsy footballers, and we had several players represent Great Britain at various Paralympic games. Again, massively proud moment for us, for me as a coach, to have any type of influence on their development, to get selected at that level. Brilliant. And then the FA withdrew the funding, and we decided to create our own club for cerebral palsy footballers. Initially, it was just for adults, and then it just snowballed that we ended up with hundreds of players from the northwest and further afield. But the adult team that I was working with, we'd won consecutive trebles, where we won our League Cup and the Disability FA Cup. And we were sort of, we were approached to go and compete abroad. This was we're talking 2017 now. So this was like, I'm trying to summarise 9 years of coaching as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
So we're at 2017, and we were approached to compete in this international tournament in Barcelona it had carried 12 Paralympic ranking points. So the dispensation we had to get accepted and to be permitted to go for it was just, the red tape was ridiculous. And then we got there and we won the tournament. It was like Roy the Rovers type stuff. We were a little club based in Salford in Manchester, and we beat Chile 2-1 in the final. We absolutely hammered Ireland. We hammered Finland. We hammered Jordan. We beat Chile 2-1. It was absolutely incredible. The most unbelievable experience of my life. That was like when I got into coaching, my ambition was to coach abroad. But the more I got into it, my ambition was to coach abroad, but compete abroad, not just go and just turn up and coach. It was compete. To go and compete as a club in an international tournament that carried X amount of ranking points for the what would have been the Tokyo Games. It was just like
incredible.
It was. But then,
I'm sure there's a movie in there, Sean.
Well, I got back to the UK, and that year I was awarded Sports Personality of the Year for the Northwest, BBC Sports Personality of the Year, which was just, again, surreal experience. And then at Spotty, I knew I was at tipping point. Again, this substance abuse cycle was still going on. PTSD, I still didn't associate it with me. I always associated that with people coming back from war and things like that.
Yeah.
Like severe, I didn't class what I had experienced as severe trauma. Not that there's any hierarchy of trauma, but I didn't consider it. It was just a sports injury. It's not like you don't hear people breaking their neck playing football, and not every other day someone gets told they're never going to walk again. Decided at Spotty, I said to my wife that night, I said, I'm done with football. My wife actually at one point thought I had bipolar, the way I was behaving, coming out of just a substance abuse. I'd go missing for days. But then when I was on it and not in this cycle of abuse, I'd be like the best husband in the world. And then she just couldn't work out what was going on. So
confusing for her, eh?
Well, she didn't know. I didn't tell anybody about it. So I decided to go and get help at a local provider called Change, Grow, Live, CGL, and walked in. So this was March 2018, I think. Yeah, March 2018. I walked in and I said, I don't know what I'm saying. This is the situation. I don't know what. It was like a plea for help, but I had no direction where I was going. I had no expectation. They said, all right, come in here. Went and sat with this guy, proper guy you could tell had been around the block a little bit, like really top man. And he said, I've got the guy for you and I've got the thing for you. In walked another gentleman. He said, Sean, this is Tony. We want you to go to this church tonight to one of the programs. I was like, okay. So I came home thinking, am I going to go home or not? I had to pluck up the courage to do it, and it took me a good hour to just get in my car to go. Drove to this church, sat down, and for the first time in my life, I said, my name's Sean and I'm an addict. And never in my life did I think that I felt that associated to what I was doing. I didn't realise I had an addiction.
Yeah.
And those words and being in that room that night, listening to other people talk about their experiences, me being able to talk about my experience without any judgment, without any fear, was just the most liberating experience of my life. I felt like the whole world had been lifted off my shoulders, and that the chains had been let out, the handcuffs and the chains were off. And yeah, they sort of try to get you to do a 12-step program. That wasn't for me. I started to do it, and it's very, very sort of successful, but it just didn't feel right for me. So what I did is I had some time reflecting as I'm listening, and I thought, what have I done? Where have I recovered in my life, or where I've been through a challenge that I can utilize in this situation. And it stood out like a sore thumb. I broke my bloody neck. I'd been through a process of recovery. I'm going to do exactly what I did there now. So, right, start eating right, start sleeping right, get in the gym and actually do something instead of bumming around, just actually get a program.
Yep.
Start hydrating properly, start becoming aware about what you're doing and where you are. Obviously, you have to abstain from alcohol and anything else that comes with that, drugs, etc. Which wasn't, at first, it was a bit of a challenge, but the longer it went on, the easier it got.
The habit. Yep.
Yeah, the culture was, the shock when I was sort of said, yeah, I don't drink anymore, was like, what? It was like, what do you mean you don't drink anymore? What do you do then? Well, I don't do anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, I just went into this sort of process of gym, eating right, sleeping right, making sure I'm hydrated, really sort of going on this journey of self-discovery, if you like. It's a bit of a cliche, but that's exactly what it was. Reading and researching and finding out about addiction and where it all lies. And some of the things I found were absolutely unbelievable. One of the leading voices on addiction in the world, a guy called Dr. Gabor Mate, he wrote a book called In the Realms of Hungry Ghosts, and it just talks all about addiction. And it's basically imprinted in your brain when you're young. It's a disconnect between certain neurotransmitters. If you don't feel emotional attachment, you don't have to experience trauma. You don't have to experience, heartbreak or anything like that. Yeah, that doesn't help, and it adds fuel to the flames, if you like, but it's there. And as I started to think about my behavior when I was 14, 15, 16, the way I acted and the things I did, I can see it now clear as day that the seeds were there. It was already in me as an individual. Obsession and obsessive behaviors, and I used to cut myself a little bit of self-harm. But that's all classic signs of addiction in a younger age. And then typically it would manifest as in some form of abuse. And everyone thinks as addiction as like someone on a street corner injecting heroin. It's not all that. It's a short-term behavior that will cause you long-term damage. And with my situation, I mean, I'm now 3 years clean.
Well done.
Best I've felt in my life, and I've got a disability, and I'm proud to say that, and I can now deal with that. Without going through this process, I don't think I would have been able to deal with that. And it's just yeah, it's amazing. It's just been an amazing journey, and it shows what you can do. Well, what people are capable of. I've gone through paralysis. The thing with the paralysis was the goal was clear to me. It was walking out of the hospital. I knew what it looked like. Going through mental health challenges, in there was a bit of depression, classic signs of anxiety, all that you would associate with, typically associated with PTSD and addiction just being one of the sort of outcomes of that. There was no sort of, I couldn't visualize what the goal would be and what the sort of output would look like. So paralysis, I'm going to walk out of here. If it's on crutches, it's on crutches. But mental health, mental illness, what's it going to look like? I didn't know. So I didn't know what to do. And that was the challenge. And that is the challenge we've got. It's just everything is unique with people with mental illness. And yeah, it's been some journey.
It certainly has. I mean, that is a story and a half, Sean. And it just shows you, you're not just talking about the physical disability that you had. It's all the things that came along with your mental health and the PTSD. But I'm very much into self-development myself, and it's incredible what your thoughts can do. And clearly, your thoughts about you're going to change your situation got you to that place. And I really believe in all that. I really believe that the thoughts that you put out there, if you've got positive thoughts and you can see yourself in a certain situation, then you'll do that. I don't know if you've read any of Dr. Joe Dispenza books.
I've not, no. I completely subscribe to that though. There's something at the moment, epigenetics, which is like the new space in you probably know about, a new space in medicine. It's basically about your environment influences your genes.
Yes.
I completely 100% subscribe to that model, that what you experience in your life, well, it's not a model, it's science, and it will come out very soon.
Absolutely.
But your environment doesn't limit you. And as you quite rightly say, if you've got the right mindset and your thoughts are right, then you're going to give yourself a better chance to achieve whatever you want to achieve, whether it's recovery from an injury, illness, whatever, changing, stopping smoking. You know, as long as your mindset is right, yeah, you need you obviously need the resources around you and the support network in that. But it's your mental state and your brain that takes that first step, that makes that decision. Yes, I need to do this. I need to, or do I want to? And if you can, I need to and I want to, then that's powerful. That is very powerful. And chances are you're going to get there. Yeah,
absolutely. What you say is right. I'm doing a hypnotherapy course at the moment, you know, because I just don't want to stop at the NLP or anything else. So I started that in 2019. I've gone back to it again. And one of the modules I've just done is about metaphysics and epigenetics, and it's just incredible. But I subscribe to that kind of stuff anyway. And it is about, and Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I'm talking about, he, you know, I've read this book he does, Becoming Supernatural, and it is about putting your thoughts out there and creating that vision. And I think it sounds like that's what you did, that's what you employed, but you didn't actually know that at that time, Sean.
No,
you've obviously done it without knowing anything about that. But your resilience, I think your resilience, and maybe what you've been through in your childhood, whatever, I don't know your background, I don't know all the ins and outs, but you've kind of highlighted a bit of a story there. Your resilience gets you through that. Now, you know, other people that had that experience may not have got to where you've got because their thoughts might have been negative. Their thoughts might have been, I'm never going to, this is me, this is my life, and this is who I am going to be now. You didn't do that.
Yeah, and there were examples of that within spinal injuries. There were people with, again, I don't want to sound hierarchical or like any level of superiority, but there were lesser injuries than what I had, lower injuries on the sort of spine, not as much damage to the spinal cord. Just looking at, like, if you looked at a set of x-rays and a couple of MRI scans, CAT scans or whatever, you would see the two injuries and you could probably say, well, that person's probably got a less chance of recovering compared to that person. And mindset, maybe past experiences, characteristics, all those like subtle things that we have as an individual. I felt that I was very, very strong in those areas compared to others, and I was adamant that I was walking out of that hospital. Adamant, you know. I would still be there now. Well, probably wouldn't be there now, but it wouldn't have been long. But yeah, I was adamant that I was going to walk out, and I knew what it looked like. I was using visualization. At the time, I didn't know it was called visualization, but I was looking. I could see myself doing it. And I knew exactly the steps that I had to take. Like, for example, when I gave you the example about the tilt table test to get out of bed into a wheelchair, I was going to every level of extremity to find out, right, how can I cheat it if I can't beat it? Like, I was doing everything to sort of make sure that I had to get out of that. But people were just like, not happy to be there, but they would just be day by day. Just going along with it. It was almost like you had to provoke the norm to, challenge the doctors and challenge the medics to say, look, watch this, watch me, I'll show you. And, medicine, as brilliant as it isn't the be all and end all. And I'm living proof to that. I'm super, the surgery I had undoubtedly contributed to my recovery, and I'll never be able to sort of thank the doctor that did that, Michael. It was Dr. Michael Mahoney, and it was. But the sort of bit where I went to spinal injuries and they told me I'm never going to walk again, that sort of judgment, they didn't know who I was. They didn't know what I was made up of. They didn't know what my background was. They didn't know. I remember saying determination will only get you so far. And it got me further than the door anyway. So if that's true. But again, it was like very classic medicine, C5, C6, do not walk. Like, okay, well, watch.
Yeah,
So
brilliant.
yeah,
Amazing. I did a reflexology course a couple of years ago, and I remember reading about the spine, and it was saying about the C. I can't remember how many it goes up to, 'cause a couple of years ago. But
C8 to C1.
is it? So I remember specifically reading that at the time, saying, if you're damaging any other C1, 2, 3, whatever, you can recover from that. But when it comes to that, the 5 or the 6, I think it
Yeah,
was.
the higher it goes towards 1, the less chance. Anything C1, C2, you're essentially going to die because it's going to cut off the spinal cord connectivity to the brain. I'm speaking in generally, but the higher the injury, so C1, 2, 3, 4, the nerves within the spinal cord at those sort of vertebraic junctions, if you like, it controls a certain function of your body. So 5 and 6 is responsible for upper and lower limbs and bladder and bowel move sort of control. I damaged the right hand side of my spine, and my right hand is partially paralysed. I've got a lot of weakness down my right hand side, a little bit of mobility challenges in my right leg. Like if you've got a real accurate tape measure and put my left leg against my right leg, you'd see differences in muscle size and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And power. But it could be worse.
Absolutely. And look at where you are now. Incredible. How you would never known you would have been where you are now. It's just such an incredible story. And do you want to say a little bit, just a tiny little bit about what you're doing now, Sean?
Yeah, sure. So following sort of my mental illness recovery, I decided to. I was in the workplace, and because I was always following this health and well-being agenda before it was cool and fashionable like it is now, I just carried on the what I've always done. But I worked in the corporate sector for 20 years, and I saw some people with some real tragic stories. Really, people vastly overweight and really not aware about what they're doing to the body, the way they're eating and stuff like that. So it started off in the workplace where I just used to run like health and well-being themed weeks in the workplace, and then I become a mental health first aid instructor. So I become a mental health first aider in the workplace, and from that course, I was kind of recruited by the instructor to go and do the instructor's course. So I did that, and again, I was like, where am I going with this? I don't really know. So then I decided, okay, so it was like I was meeting people along on this journey, and I decided I was going to create my own sort of well-being health consultancy, if you like, a little bit of coaching in there, some mental health first aid, going into the workplace and teaching people and qualifying people with that. I've always had a real interest in sleep, so I do quite a bit of sleep coaching, and then created some health and wellbeing coaching packages and incentives, courses, which then from that I created my own community interest company, so it demonstrates that what we do is for the benefit of the community, which is exactly what we do. We're here to benefit the community. We want people to be healthier, happier. Yeah. I'm a personal trainer, so obviously do a lot of personal training and locally some group exercise sessions. At the moment, it's all online, but it's basically functional exercise for mental health. It's a mental health initiative disguised as an exercise session. So people come together, we have a laugh, but we work through a lot of functional exercises that are going to improve activity of daily living. But essentially, we're just chatting and having fun and stuff like that. So that's great. So yeah, that's a lot of coaching. So like you, Yvonne, when we met on the course, do practitioner coaching, NLP, hypnosis, timeline. To do quite a lot of one-to-one stuff, which is great, and I absolutely love. I'm in the process of sort of building my own coaching, introduction to coaching, a course which hopefully I'll have live very soon and online. Yeah, so busy.
Very busy. So, do you know what? Isn't it interesting to see where you've come from? And sometimes I think that things happen to people, and sometimes things happen that are actually really traumatic, which is obviously what's happened to you. And you've followed this journey, this path, and sometimes the experience that you have, you've been through that, so you can share that journey and that story with other people who need a bit of inspiration, I suppose, to get through what they're getting through.
Yeah.
And you can say, right, I've been through this, I know what it's like, and you can share that story with other people to inspire them.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me this question a lot, or point to this a lot and say, like, how amazing is it that you help people? But I think what happened was, whenever you go through an experience like this, and if you're helped, I always feel like it embeds something in you that, right, someone helped me in that at my worst, if you like, I've got a responsibility to then do that myself. And if someone can learn from just listening to me talk or coming on one of my courses, which follow like the model type thing that I talked about, then I feel like it's my social responsibility to do that.
Yeah.
And if it can benefit in any way, I do a lot of like talks to companies and things like that to talk to employees about how they can support the mental health in the workplace. I should, as I say, I feel like that's my responsibility to do that, and it's important that we do that, because experience carries a lot more weight than what we realise, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's always looking for a qualification or a certificate. Yeah, it's nice to have on the wall and it's nice to have in your locker, but your experience, a certificate will only get you so far. It's like when you pass your driving test, you pass your test, you feed the wheel, you'll really learn after that, and that's experience. And I find that a lot with some of the work I do. It's tapping into my experiences and sharing my experiences to help others. And I do the same. That's how I learn. I listen to other people speak and their experiences, and just think, you know what, if I could just take 1% from this, just 1%, and bring that into what's relative for me, then I can be better. And if I can do 4 or 5 of those 1% a year, I'm 5% better. I'm 5% better.
Absolutely. We can always learn from others. We can always learn generally, read books, do courses. And I think the more that you do that, the more you can benefit yourself and help other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're all about as a community interest company. We're just here to help people and get people thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say to anybody that's watching this, you know, if anybody wanted you to do a talk or anything at any of the companies, because I'll be putting this on various social platforms, that they could get in contact with me or yourself, and I'll tag you in as well, Sean.
Yeah. So website is www.seanbaileywellness.com, SeanBailey, and then wellness.com, and everything's on there. Phone number, email, there's a contact form, all sorts of stuff. So if people need help, just a bit of advice, maybe a little bit of support, then we're always happy to help.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today, Sean. Such an inspiration, and I really hope it helps other people. And what I would like people to think of as well, that, you know, I think you, from your being a resilient person anyway, you've got through that. But I think it highlights as well that people who think that they're not going to get any further in life, build your mindset up and develop techniques and see your future as the future that you want. And it just shows that has really made all the difference to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Having an idea where you want to go, that will give you the idea about how you're going to get there. Yeah. And for me, spinal injuries, mental health recovery, 2 very tragic things. It was all just about the next step, the next day, the next step, and that really helped.
Yeah, one step at a time. I think that's it, because I think when people think, right, I've got this massive mountain to climb, it becomes overwhelming. Because if you could take a step at a time, then that really, really helps, doesn't it?
Every journey starts with one step. Say that all the time. It's a little bit of a, I don't get sick of saying it because it's so true, but it's like we want people, patience is becoming something that's being lost, I think, in society. We're not willing to work for things and be patient to get it. But yeah, one step at a time.
Yeah, literally, it was one step at a time for you, Sean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Good. So thank you again for coming on today, and I shall share this to everybody when I download it. And right, that's great. Thank you. I'll end it
Thanks,
there,
everyone.
and I'll share that on social media. Thank you again.
No worries. Cheers, everyone.
Okay.